Hi, I'm Tom Rutchick, and this is my Wolf R304 30-inch oven and range, and owned it since 2010. This is 2021, so that's 11 years. It's been pretty well serviced retail now, and the issue was that I had a bad broiler igniter and also a bad oven igniter, and both of them needed to be replaced. The broiler igniter just basically wouldn't work anymore. The oven igniter would work, but it was taking a very long time to ignite, and it was pretty clear to me that probably replacing both igniters would solve the problem. There are some other YouTube videos that explain this procedure, and they do a pretty good job, except they gave some bad advice that goes against the manufacturer's recommendations, and that's why I'm sort of posting another talk about the repair procedure here. So I'll first talk about the broiler igniter, and if we go inside the oven here, going inside the oven, and if we look up on the ceiling of the oven there, we see there's my new broiler igniter, and that's the part that needs to be replaced. And it's pretty simple to remove. It's just held in by these two little screws right up in here. You just unscrew them, and the part comes out. But you can see that the wires are going through the side of the, if I got that, there we go. As you can see, the wires from that are heading out to the side panel here. So these are the old parts that I removed. This is the igniter for the broiler. This was the igniter for the oven, and this was the this is a cover for the igniter, the broiler igniter, and you also get a Z-bracket flange and a support bracket. These parts here cost it was $82, and the oven igniter is $62, and they both to me look like the two igniters are identical, but what you get with the broiler kit for 20 bucks more is you get the cover and new brackets. And this particular Z-flange didn't be replaced. When I look at the instructions they gave me, it basically had to be replaced if you had a 60-inch, if you had the 60-inch Wolf, they wanted you to replace this so that it wouldn't interfere with the actual igniter when you put it in there. But I replaced it anyhow. It's not that hard. It's 3 screws to take out and put in the new one, and it's just a new clean looking Z-bracket. But there's no obvious deterioration in terms of having to physically really need to replace it. One thing you need to know is that there is a YouTube video out there talking about replacing this and doing the wiring of the snipping the wires and joining to the other wires that are coming from the oven and joining them and leaving them inside the oven. Well, that's a problem because that's against the manufacturer's recommendation. It's not a recommendation. They say don't do that. You need to do the connection up in, not in the oven area, but up in the range area. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment here. But that is really important, that you do not make the connection in the oven. And I know it seems like it shouldn't. It seems like it should be fine, and it will physically work. There's a YouTube showing that you can replace it, do the splicing inside the oven. Maybe saves you a little bit of time, but it's totally against what the manufacturer's instructions are. Okay, so the igniter, again, is located up in here. It's got a bracket. The igniter itself is connected to this bracket. You have to reuse the screws that you previously had that hold the bracket to the igniter, and then there's 2 screws that hold the bracket to the top of the oven. These 2 screws you remove. You can take it, once you have them removed, you can pull them down a little bit where it's easier to work with, and then remove these 2 screws to remove this part. Well, actually, you're going to get a new bracket, so you probably don't even need to take it off there. Here, as you can see, I snipped the wire here. Right, both wires, I just snipped them, and but don't pull the wires out, because we're gonna use that to feed the new wires back up into the top of the range up here. And if you buy a third-party replacement part for this, I'm not certain that you get this part. So I'm sort of hesitant on telling anybody that you can replace like with some sort of equivalent third-party igniter. It's and it's really it is more expensive, but you get all of, when you order it, you get all the parts you need to replace, and not have to deal with, oh, would you reuse this cover again? I wouldn't. It's defective. So how do you feed the wires? The wires that are, see here's the, before I snipped it, here was the wire. It was coming through, and it's really long. And like I said, previously I've seen other people say you can sort of snip it here and maybe be a little longer and wire it here inside the oven. Again, that's a bad thing to do. It's against the manufacturer's recommendations here. And but so you snip it, leave the wire in place. That wire is going to be coming in through here, and it's going to work its way out through here. We're going to use the old wires to pull the new wires back in, so they get back into the top up here. Let me show you now where the wire, so it's pretty simple. On 2 screws, remove those, and your bracket's ready to go. And you go ahead and clip it, leave the wires in place, because you're going to pull the new ones back through. And here, as you can see, it's working okay. All right, so the wires come back through, and they're up in here. And it's underneath this little cover here. And let me see if I can get that a little better looking here. So we come up through here and right up. I'm going to go ahead and remove this little cover that protects the wiring. And here we go. This is how this wire here comes in through the side here. These are the wires that lead to your igniter. As you can see, it has a fast connector on it. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. There it is here. You can go ahead and disconnect it. And the new, if you buy the original manufacturer's part, the new one has a little, what do they call that? Just the male end of the connector that goes inside this little plastic connector here. And normally, I think they give you 2 ceramic things. You could just snip the wires and snip the new wires and use the ceramic wire nuts and do the wiring up here and join them together. Or if you're very clever, you can, since it has the actual plug clip in there, you can remove it from the old connector. And if you're very careful, you can get it out and just push it back in and completely avoid the use of those ceramic connectors. And that's what I did, was rather than use the ceramic connectors, I just replaced it back in place so it looks original, and everything is just, I think it's nicer that way. But to do this, to get the wires out, you have to use a needle nose pliers, but not just any ordinary wire nose pliers. You got to be a little careful about your selection here. Let me see here. Here's a couple of, here's two different needle nose pliers. This one here is too big. This one you can sort of see, whoops. This one you can see has the nose is much smaller, and you can get that nose inside. You can get that nose inside and pull on, or from. You can kind of push and squeeze and push that. What you're trying to do is, if you look at the ends here, I think it's better this way. You push on these ends. If you get into the plug, you push on these ends, and basically there's a little metal flange that's pushing out, and you can squeeze them together and pull it out. And when you push the new one in, it'll push in and it'll clip back in place for you. It's kind of, it's not easy to know when you physically got that pushed in so you can pull it out, but just play around and you'll be able to get that inside the connector as long as you got a very thin needle nose tip to it. And pull it out and you just plug the new one in. So what you try to do then is you connect the new wires, you tape them together and use the old wires to pull the new wires back through. And you should be able to get them back up here. If for some reason you can't get the wires through, you pull it or it comes apart and you're stuck, you're left with a little bigger project. You have to remove the side panel. As a matter of fact, that's what I did when I first did this, because I didn't know where these wires went to, and so I took the side panel off, thinking somewhere over there was where the connection was, but lo and behold, it's like up in here that it's done. And if you get the original, like I said, get the original manufacturer's part, it comes with the little clip there. You can do it, and it's nice, clean, and it's exactly the way it originally was. And the third-party burner replacements, I think they're just bare wires, and you won't be able to do this procedure, or you'll have to use the ceramic wing knife to tighten them. But again, don't do the shortcut that I've seen another YouTube video do, where they wire it in. They do the wiring and they put the wiring inside the oven. And the manufacturer does have some instruction sheet they give you when you buy the broiler igniter kit. They do have some instructions, and let's see if I can zoom in on it. And here they are, and that's basically where did they say that? They say yeah. Where is that there? Yeah, reconnect wires under the pressed steel top, not inside of the oven, using the ceramic wire nuts provided. So the reason they're saying don't use use the ceramic wire nuts, they're doing the splicing up in the inside and using that. It's because sometimes a lot of people don't have that little wire nose, and it's hard to explain to people how to pinch that little piece together so you can pull it out. But it took me about 20 seconds per end to get them out. But you can pop them out and just use that and eliminate the ceramic nut altogether. The other thing, they're talking here again, this Z bracket thing, that's along the side.
they're telling you that to replace it, but they're really saying you only need to do, there's some instructions here that say you really only need to do that if you have a 60-inch unit. So, but I went ahead and replaced it because why not? It's a new piece. A couple of cautions you have to have is make sure you don't drop the ceramic igniter. If you drop it, you can damage it. It won't work. You broke it. So be careful on that. And the other thing, what was I going to say here? The other thing is if you put it all back together and try the igniter and it doesn't work, you've probably not made this actual connector up in here. You might not have actually, it might have slipped back, it might not have set correctly. Just make sure they make contact. And I had to do that after I turned it on, it wasn't working, and I knew exactly, there's only one connection, this is it. It's not working because I didn't make the connection properly, and I pushed it on, and sure enough, after that worked perfect. So that's how you replace the broiler. And again, part of my the broiler igniter, but again, part of my reason is explaining this procedure is do the connection up here. I'm not certain, is it wrong to make this? Could you splice it inside the oven? You certainly could do that, but it's why? It's easier to do it up. It's easier to do it up here. It's the right way, and the manufacturer says don't do it in there. So don't do it there. So the next thing I'm going to do is talk about the oven igniter. The oven igniter is located just below this bottom, the bottom of the oven here, and there are two places you need to remove this bottom plate of the oven. That's pretty simple to do, and you need to also underneath in the front here you need to remove this plate right up in here, and this plate's it has two screws, one here and one right over here that you unscrew, and basically you lift it up and you should be able to pull it out. And if it's a little tight, it's because it's rubbing right in this area here. It'll come out just fine and easy, and that'll get you access to some of the parts in the front. There's a couple of places you're going to have to unscrew. Let's go ahead and take the grills out. Okay, this part here lifts out and out. I'm not actually going to take it out, but you can see you can also lift it up, take this part out. There we go. And the oven bottom, there's only 4 screws, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. They're sometimes hard to get out, and I've even heard of somebody saying that they actually stripped I think they messed up the head of the screw. They couldn't get it out because you know how things get when they in a heated area, the parts get tight and rusted, or I shouldn't say rusted. These are sort of stainless steel parts. They really didn't rust, but they do get hard to remove. Here's a tip. So if you're having a hard time getting these screws off, here's a little trick. Make sure you get a properly fitting, get a screwdriver, Phillips, these are Phillips heads. Make sure you get one that's properly sized for the actual head that you have. There are different sizes. They're like number 1, number 2, things like that. And you can just sort of tell that I've got a good bite into the head when I push it down. Now, another trick I do is if it's hard, you want to be able to put a lot of force down pushing down hard, and I connected a vice grip to it so I can push down hard and then give a turn. And so if it's getting really hard to get out, and once it cracks and breaks, then you can just take this off and just take it off by hand. And what I also do is after I take the part off, if it was a hard one to get off, take a little steel wool and rub it, or I used a metal polish and just cleaned it up a little bit. That makes it easier to go back in and out. And the other thing you can do sometimes, in my case, I have this nice drill that has to push out a lot of torque. I can also push that one down. I can also get a lot of force down on it and push down. So that's another alternative. But most people just only really have good screwdrivers. Make sure, again, properly sized one. If you strip the head off, I've heard that it's a pretty tough deal. You have to drill it out, and you'll be cussing and swearing and all mad at yourself for not, getting a properly fitted head as you push down. Most of mine were pretty easy. I think there was one of them that was harder than the other, and I think it was this one here that was hard. The others all came out with a reasonable amount of pressure and turning, but that depends on how much use that your oven has had and so on. So you take the 4 screws off, you pick up the pan, and then that gets you in the inside of the oven. And what you'll find under there is there's a V-shaped plate that you can just lift it out, and below that is another part that I'm going to show you that I had to replace. So this is the oven tube, and that's again when you take that bottom of the oven off, lift up that little V plate that's sitting just above this here. You'll find when you move that cover, you'll find this is where the oven plate is. It's connected, and it connects to the oven in just 3 places. One at the top, that would be at the back of the stove, and there's 2 other places that screws go through, and that's that you have to access. You have access to these 2 screws at the bottom front of the oven. That oven cover piece that you took off at the bottom that'll allow you to take those 2 screws off. And you can see in my case, this had a big little rusted spot there, and I'm not totally sure, but it might have been about a year or 2 ago that we noticed that the oven, when you would ignite it, the oven would still work, but when it ignited, it poof, big loud noise, and kept on getting worse. I have a strong feeling that's probably due to this deterioration here. And so there was one YouTube video that I saw that said, you can replace the igniter oven, the oven igniter, without taking off the floor pan of the oven. And I'm going to say that's a bad idea. And the reason I'm going to say it's a bad idea, it doesn't allow you the opportunity to inspect it. Because if this is wrong, if you're having a problem like that, you want to replace it. And it's pretty. You take the screws off, and you'll be able to lift it out, and you'll be able to put it back in. You always have a little bit of a difficulty making sure that your holes line up with where it screws back in, but you'll be able to figure that out. It's not, if you're any bit handy, it's pretty simple to replace that. And the igniter itself connects onto this tube. It goes over here, and there's the 2 screws. You'll reuse those 2 screws when you put the new one on, and the wires will then come back. One end has a little metal connector, little flathead connector, and you should be able to take it off where you'll see where it plugs into. You'll be able to, and it also comes with this what do you call that? A shrink wrap tubing. So you'll be able to take the old one off, and you might have to tear it back a little bit on the oven, and when you put this, you put the new one back in, and you also make sure before you connect it to put the shrink wrap in along the wire, and it's going to be wider. And what you do is use like a little heat gun, and you heat the shrink tube, and it'll shrink and fit your and tighten around the wire itself. And the other one end is if you have that, so like I said, I didn't use those. You could use those ceramic ends and strip the two wires and use one of those ceramic screws that were part of the broiler igniter and connect them. Or in my case, I was able to pull it. There's basically this wire joins to another wire with a splice and some kind of heat shrink protector around it. And I was able to remove the little shrink wrap protection back a little bit, pull out the old one, and put back in the new one and re-crimp it. And but if you don't, it's no big deal. Just use one of those, a ceramic wire nut to connect them together, or you might want to get a new wire splicing thing. You'll sort of see the size when you take it out that it's not particularly hard. But that's it. Just you and if you don't need to replace if your oven tube is fine and you don't need to replace it, all you have to do is take off these two screws here, there, and well, I don't have the screws there, but you take them out and put in the new one and screw them back in, and these will be coming, these wires here are again accessed from the front bottom of the stove there, and it'll be pretty obvious to you how to get to that. And that's basically it. And then the other thing I'll talk about is this was the old oven, what do they call that, gasket, the oven gasket. And mine had a problem. You can sort of see there's there's little holes, and these little things go into little holes in the floor. There's some in the see, how does that work here? So here's the new gasket. The ends of it are pushed through these little tiny holes there. When I took the old one off, when I pulled them out, you can see the ends here sort of snagged on the metal and were damaged. But the other problem I had was these. If you can see these little, there are those little clips that go into the tiny holes in the that are placed out through here, and the very bottom of the oven. You can see what you can't see, but the very bottom, the tops and the side are very flexible, but the very bottom was just hard and brittle and feeling, and it probably doesn't make a good seal. So that was a good reason. That was at least my reason of replacing it. So let me. Oh, there was one more thing I did forget to mention on the broiler igniter earlier. There's two wires that come out of it, and if you have a question of like, is there does it matter which end is connected to which end? The answer is no. Generally, you can kind of tell that because there's no color coding, there's no way to identify one over the other. So it doesn't matter when you connect it whether you are connecting the right side to the right side. You connect the two wires to either end of that connector. Okay, and I'm going to sum this up a little bit now. Okay, so these are all the parts that I replaced, The igniter, oven igniter, $62. The broiler igniter kit, $82. The oven tube was about $100. And of course, the old gasket seal was about $47. So total to me was $291. When I ordered it from the authorized parts seller, they charged me $25 for shipping. So make sure you look at your oven before you order the parts, and make sure you get all of the parts so that you don't end up having to pay get another part and have to pay another shipping fee or so. They got it to me. I ordered it on a Friday, and they had it to me by Monday afternoon. So I was happy with that. Again, my recommendations. You spend a lot. If you've got a wolf, you probably spent a lot. I spent a lot of money for it. I think mine was like, I looked it up, and I bought it in 2010, and I think with sales tax and whatever other charges they gave me, I think it was like $4,700. And you got a good oven. They're pretty solidly built. There's really nothing else wrong with my oven there other than these parts after 11 years needed to be replaced. I would recommend staying with the manufacturer's part, and also be careful of being misled by some of the online parts places. I know this part here, I paid $62 for it online, genuine wolf parts from a third-party seller. This was like $164, and the broiler kit was $168. They're charging about 3 times more than buying directly from the actual authorized parts seller. So there's at least a hint for you of it's not buying directly from the manufacturer himself is sometimes a better deal.